Yeah, okay, we're good.
We're good.
Okay. So how long have you been a missionary in Colombia?
Well, my wife, Joan Lehmann, and myself, Carl Lehmann, we have been in Colombia since 1963. We went down to study Spanish for a few months and then began to work with an Indian tribe on the Colombian-Venezuelan border in northeast Colombia.
Okay. Why did you decide to go to Colombia?
Well, the Lord led us there. First we were working in the Bahamas, and then after 3 years we came home to study linguistics at the Wycliffe Bible Translators Camp in North Dakota, and there we met a man that was working with this tribe in Colombia. And so after a few years we went to join him in that work.
What did your work in Colombia involve?
Well, first of all, we had to learn Spanish, which is the national language of Colombia. And then we had to learn the Indian language. Now, the Indians do not speak Spanish, so we had to just listen to them, write down what they said, and then analyze what they said and try to figure out, first of all, the alphabet for their language, and then the grammar structure of the language.
Okay, hold on. I'm just going to close the door. Right
Yeah,
now.
okay. Did you turn that off?
No, it's fine. I can just edit it later.
Oh.
Okay. My next question is, what was the Latin American mission?
The Latin American mission is a mission that works in northern Colombia, and one of their missionaries was Ernest Fowler, who would visit us from time to time in our Indian location. He and Mr. Clark, who we went to work with, had worked in that tribe since the 1940s. But then during the violence in Colombia, when there was a religious persecution violence for about 10 years during the 1950s, they had to leave that work for a while. But in the 60s, when we went back to join Mr. Clark, Ernie Fowler also came back to work with us from time to time.
Okay. How long did you know Ernest Fowler and his family?
Since 1964, I guess.
Okay. What was he like? Like, what do you remember most clearly about him? Like,
Well,
his personality.
When he would come to visit us, he brought a book with him, and it was a children's story book. And he would sit and visit and read it to our daughter Lavinia, who is now your aunt, Lavinia Carletta. And he was a great man. He was a very fatherly man, and the Indians just loved him. He had a way with the Indians that he was very warm and interested, and he was very helpful to us.
All right. Okay. Why did you have to leave Colombia? So then when Mr. Fowler took your place?
All right, we had been up there for about 3 years working with the Indians on and off. And of course our diet wasn't very well, and my wife got pretty run down, so we thought we'd come back to the United States for a few months. And that was in 1966. And so Ernest Fowler and his wife Eve and their children agreed to replace us. He got his children out of school for the summer vacation, and they took the trip up to the mountains. It's an all-day trip by mule or walking. And he took his whole family up there, and they put up a big tent under an Indian roof, and they lived in the tent, and we had a little house up there. And so after about 2 or 3 weeks, we handed everything over to Ernest Fowler and his family, and we left to come home at that time.
Who are the Yukpa Indians?
Okay, the Yukpa Indians are an Indian tribe that was driven by the Spaniards from the lowlands up into the mountains when they conquered Colombia sort of in the 16th, 17th century. And they're a remnant of the Carib Indians, black Carib Indians actually from the Caribbean area. And they are called Yukpa because the word uk means to cut. And if you put a Y in front of it, Yukpa, it means to cut yourself or your own hair. And if you put a PA on the end of it, Yukpa, it means the people of the short-cut hair. It makes a verb into a noun.
Okay, so was Mr. Fowler just carrying on your work with the Yukpa Indians while you were gone?
Yes, the idea was that I was going to bring my wife and Lavinia home, and then I was going to go right back. And Ernest would take his family down to the city and where they lived in Cartagena, and then he would come back with me, and we were going to stay in there during the rainy season up until mid-December, maybe. So we left in the end of July, mid-July, the end of July, went to Bogota, got our papers, and traveled to the Bahamas, where my wife and Lavinia were going to stay while I went back to Colombia.
Okay, why had you and Mr. Fowler and the other missionaries invested so much time in those Indians?
Well, because these Indians don't know the Lord Jesus, they don't have the Bible in their own language, and they don't know the way of salvation. So that was our main purpose for being there, of course, to reduce their language to a written form so that we could translate the Bible into their language. That was our work.
Were the Indians responsive to what you taught them?
Yes, quite a few of them came to know the Lord at that time, and I know the two chiefs, Papa Marte and Jose Manuel. Those two men, especially Papa Marte, was a Christian. He believed in the Lord, and his story when he was dying is a very wonderful testimony to the fact that he truly was a child of God.
Okay, so now I want to ask, actually, hold on. I'm just going to move the camera. I still want you to look at me when you're talking, but I'm just going to move it over. So don't look at the camera.
Oh, okay.
But I want it to be, just look at me when you're talking.
Is it off?
No, it's still gone, but I can edit it. I'm
Okay,
just going to
well,
edit it.
I want to tell you that story about Papa Marte.
Okay.
You can ask me that at the end.